You're watching the KGP pregame show, live from the KGP studios in downtown Cambridge, Ohio. Your source for the latest local sports highlights, interviews, and information. Brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Caleb Graham Productions. And now, let's go live to the guys in the studio.
Hello, we would like to welcome you to the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP pregame show, once again coming to you live from the beautiful studios of Caleb Graham Productions. I'm merely Tom Strasser. My partner in crime and sidekicks, Heath Dawson, Darren McCullough, they're my teammates. And it's hard to believe week 9 of the high school football season is upon us. And fellas, when you look back to week 8 for our 3 local teams, things went pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, clean sweep for us. That might be the first time all season that's happened.
Second time, actually.
Second time. You're right, Train. So really a great feeling after Friday night for our local schools. Big props to Josh Lowry for getting us a Cambridge helmet on the set. So increasing our set props here. So that was awesome. But yeah, you and I, obviously, Tommy, were live at the trail game. Train, you were at Meadowbrook game, and I know Kirby Graham was on assignment once again. So, but yeah, just an awesome weekend, a good feeling to finish in, come into the season and finish strong. So that's really a good job on all 3 of our local teams.
And fellas, I can tell you, I know for a fact, our closer, Kirby Graham, had a better Saturday night than the Yankees closer did. So, but we're going to jump ahead and look and talk about the Cambridge Bobcats. And fellas, the Bobcats last week got back home and had a big game against the Coshocton Redskins. And fellas, things just started off slow for Cambridge. And talking to Coach Lowry, with no school Friday, things were just kind of out of whack. And a slow start for the Bobcats at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, when you look up at the scoreboard, they're down 12-0. And, probably a little bit of panic setting in on the sidelines for Cambridge. But, they were resilient, able to score 2 touchdowns there in the second quarter to take the lead going into the half, and then pitched a shutout in the second half, which they've been known to do that this season, is pitch shutouts in the second half. So, hats off to Coach Lowry and his staff there for, not giving up and being resilient.
And D-Train had a chance to talk to Coach Lowry before we went on air and was just talking about the slow start. And Coshocton, for years, they have been known for their vaunted wing tee attack. They've kind of gotten away from it this year. They still mix it in a little bit, but they came out and it was predominantly wing tee. Yeah. And just 3 yards here, 2 yards here, 4 yards here, maybe the fastest first quarter we've seen played this year.
Yeah, I mean, they've been running a little bit of a spread more this year, but they decided to go full go with the wing tee. And my guess is last week we talked about how their defense has kind of been the weakness of their team. Well, they're going with the old strategy. If we have the ball, the other team can't score, and you keep turning off 3 and 4 yards every time, you're getting the first down on that 3rd and short. You're putting yourself in 3rd and manageable situations, and that's what they were doing that entire first half.
Yep.
And Heath, like we said, Cambridge's defense has been outstanding all year long. It was 12-0 at the end of the first quarter, and once Cambridge defensively got adjusted to what Coshocton was doing offensively, over the next 3 quarters, they once again pitch a shutout.
Right, and you got to look, their defense forced 3 turnovers. Those turnovers were huge because, Coshocton, there early going, it looked like they were going to score every time they had the football. So, Cambridge was able to get settled in. I did talk to Coach Lowry about the way their defense played and, forcing those turnovers, and he said, hey, that's been our defense all year long. We know that we are going to give up some touchdowns, but for our defense to continue to limit what teams do offensively and to cause turnovers, that has been a huge part of our success we've had this year. And honestly, without their defense, a couple different games, remember looking back to Warren, Marietta, they've really had big second halves defensively this year. So hats off once again to that defense.
And Train, really, you look at the mentality and the toughness for the Bobcats. They've played nearly 18 minutes, 17, 18 minutes, and they're shut out. It's 12-0. Earlier in the year, they may have kind of got a little dejected, but boy, the last 5.5 minutes of the first half, how crucial was it to get those 2 touchdowns and get the lead going into half?
Well, I know at one point, Coach Lai, who was in here earlier, like we said today, he told his players, like, you guys want to just go home or we want to play? Mm-hmm. And I think his players respond to him about as well as any players in the state of Ohio, and those players kind of take off of his personality and feed off of his momentum or his way of motivating them, and they realize, hey, we got to step up. Coach wants us to start playing. It's time. The lights are on. It's time to go.
And Heath, when you look, and not making excuses for Cambridge and their slow start, but when you don't have school on Friday, and like we said, athletes, they're such creatures of habit, and when you're not at school all day and then getting ready to go to the field and get the pregame stuff going on, you're laying around at home running here or there, and then it's like, oh yeah, we've got a game today. That can make a difference if everybody's not focused come kickoff.
Yeah, and I know you guys got to talk to Coach Lowry as he dropped the helmet off here, but I was able to talk to him earlier today about that. They're off during the day from school, and you look in the first quarter, halfway through the second quarter, and they're still off. They haven't arrived, and all of a sudden at that 5:26 mark, you look up and senior quarterback Cody Moore hits junior Caden Whaley for a 16-yard score, and I bet if you were on the sidelines, you could hear a huge sigh of relief, because I bet it was at that moment that Coach Lowry and his staff said, okay, we're awake, school's on again, we're ready to go. And I did say, were you concerned, with the way you guys started? And he said, listen, I was pleased with the way we handled the adversity of being down 12-0 early in the game. He said, one of the concerns I had going in was that as how we would start the game considering we didn't have school. He said it goes to show you the leadership we have on our team because we never quit. And, that is the thing about Cambridge. You guys had said, maybe earlier in the season, maybe they fold, but that's the character of that team. They haven't quit, and when you look, they've won 3 straight and 5 of 6 games now. So that really shows you after that rough 0-2 start, in the first 2 weeks they got buried, So when you look at the resiliency of that team, hey, Coach Lowry and his staff deserves tons and tons of credit, because, a lot of coaching staffs wouldn't have been able to keep the kids and keep that locker room together. They've done that, and that's why I think they responded the way they did on Friday night.
And Train, when Heath says they've won 5 out of 6, the one they did not win may have been one, if not their best game of the year against Bel Air.
Yeah, that was a heck of a triple overtime battle. I mean, and Coach Lowry was actually talking to me before that, and he said if they would have won that game, they did the numbers, and they said they'd be number 7 in Division 4, Region 15, and now they'd be in the playoffs as of through 8 weeks. So definitely that's one of those ones that maybe looking back at week 10, you win there and you're 7-3. I'm thinking, well, are we making it or not? And then if you're on the outside, it's like, what if? I mean, and unfortunately, football, like they say, is a game of inches, and you definitely could say.
And I'll touch on that here in a second, Train, when we get to the Bel Air game, because I want to mention here in a second. So,
but Heath, you look. You talked about the touchdown pass, Moore to Whaley, with under 6 minutes left. And then really, once again, the Cambridge defense steps up, gets the ball back to the offense, and then there goes that man, Trayvon Jeffrey, again, finishes off the drive with a touchdown to give Cambridge the lead. So you're kind of frustrated the entire first half. How big was it for the Cats to head to the locker room actually up 2?
Yeah, I mean, there's, as you said, senior running back Trayvon Jeffrey, a 2-yard touchdown run at the 1:53 mark of the second. And, on the flip side of things, imagine how dejected Coshocton had to be. They dominate the first quarter and a half, and all of a sudden they look up and they're like, wait a second, we were just up 12-0 in 5 minutes and a half. We're down 14-12. So you're right, Tommy. That was huge for Cambridge to get those points, because you're going in now 14-12. You know that you had struggled in the first quarter. You now got the momentum going in, and if Cambridge doesn't score, that first touchdown, I'm not so sure they wouldn't have come out of there with a win the other night. But I think that got them rolling and got them their confidence. They were able to do things again on the ground. Trayvon had 126 yards, 2 touchdowns on 18 carries. So, he's been huge. For the season, Trayvon has 812 yards, 10 touchdowns on 156 carries. So he is closing in on a 1,000-yard rushing season. So, after the first few weeks, you would have never guessed that. So, it just goes to show how much better Cambridge has got from the start of the season to now.
We can just mark it down. He's going to get 100 yards and a touchdown at least every game.
Right.
That's what it's been for at least the past 5-6 weeks.
Yep.
And D-Train, again, like Heath said, you look at the improvement of this Bobcat squad. What does it say? Who would believe that we would sit here, watching Week 8 and say Coshocton probably maybe outplayed Cambridge 18 of the 24 minutes of the first half, but Cambridge still was able to take the lead into the half after being outplayed the majority of it.
Yeah, and that, again, we keep praising Coach Lowry and his staff. And you got to give them the credit. They get the kids motivated. They call them out and say, listen, we need to go. It's our time now. This is our game.
Yep.
We got to win this game. And the players respond. Coaches are doing their job, getting the kids, putting them in positions to succeed. That's the most important thing. And obviously, Trayvon wasn't really a big part of the running game early on, but now Coach Lowry's put him in there, and he has just taken off since then. Cody Moore, they really kind of ran the ball a lot more.
Yeah.
Now they've let him throw the ball. He's taken off. He's a guaranteed at least 100, 150 yards passing and a touchdown every game too. So it's just getting those guys in successful positions.
And the nice thing about Cody is he's sitting at 907 yards and 11 touchdowns with only 3 picks. So really doing a good job of not turning it over. 61 of 130 on the season passing. So, they have really done a nice job with the balance, as you said, Train, as the season's going on. That's a huge testament to our offensive line as well, because remember how big of a mess they were after the first couple weeks. 10 full starts in one game. They have really limited the penalties, and it shows. They're just, right now, they are a well-balanced machine on offense right now.
And then the second half, Cambridge gets down in the red zone, gets down inside the 10, and you get turned away. It's 4th down. And, fellas, how nice is it to be able to bring a field goal kicker out and get you 3 points to extend the lead to 5.
And that's what I said a second ago, what I wanted to talk about. Sophomore Andrew Philippes, I don't think we can tell how big of a weapon he is. In high school, you don't see kickers that are that good. Factoid for you, the kid hasn't missed a PAT on the year. Now, you go back to that Blair game, it's 20-19. He had to leave at the half. If he would have been there, it's a guaranteed extra point. And they might still be playing right now, the way that game was going. But Andrew, the other night, 3 of 3 on the PATs, a 23-yard field goal. That kid is a weapon. And a lot of times, it's the running back or the quarterback that gets the recognition. But let me tell you, folks, Andrew Philippes is a sophomore, and there's a lot of teams that's sad he's going to be around kicking field goals and extra points for 2 more years. Coach Lowry said, listen, Andrew Philippes is a very important part of our football team, and for those who don't think he is, just look at that Belair game. And he said he has gotten better as the year has went on. He's gaining a lot of confidence. It's good to know that he still has 2 more years kicking for us.
Yeah, and again, the Cambridge defense, you got to realize, fellas, now you're into the 4th quarter, and it's a 5-point game. And any slip, any breakdown, not covering your gaps defensively, Coshocton's, they're 1 touchdown away from taking the lead. But again, the defense held strong and then gave Cambridge the ball back again, and Cambridge was able to seal it with a late touchdown.
Yeah, again, Trayvon Jeffrey, 11-yard touchdown run in the 4th quarter to put the game away. So, he's kind of been their closer here in the second half, getting big runs and putting more points on the board. So, yeah, it's just, again, we praise Coach Lowry and his staff a lot, but Train has already done it once. I've done it. We all have. It's just their team right now is playing so well. And, who would have thought going into the season after 0-2 that you would be looking at with them having a chance to go to the playoffs? Also, probably favored, as far as this weekend goes. You don't want to discount Riverview, but you'd have to say Cambridge a favorite. And going into the Guernsey County Super Bowl, I wouldn't be so sure that these guys aren't favored to win that. So, it's just a testament to that team, and it's been fun to be a part of it from KGP production side to watch what they've done.
And D-Train, I like that Coach Lowry, one of the things he did in talking to us earlier was say, hey, Coshocton's not bad. They do a lot of things well. Don't look at their record. Look at who they've played. They have played a brutal schedule, and we thought Coshocton was better than their record indicated, just based on who they've played and a lot of the playoff teams they've played. And give the Redskins credit. They came in with expectations to win the game and gave themselves a chance.
Yeah, whenever you can go from a mostly spread to a wing tee or run both styles of offense and run them somewhat efficiently, that just is a credit to their staff and their kids, knowing the positions, know the spots they have to be in, because I honestly think the wing tee offense is probably one of the toughest offenses for a high school program to run, even though you see a lot of them to run it with all of the different misdirection and counter plays in it. While the spread's more of a, we've got the athletes on the outside, we can use it. Well, they kind of, if you can run both of them.
So Heath, the Cats get Coshocton. They keep their playoff hopes alive, and ECOL title hopes on their side alive. And now here comes the Riverview Black Bears. And what problems will they present for the Bobcats?
As you said, Cambridge sitting there in the playoff hunt. They're number 11 right now, and D4 Region 15 ratings. They still have some points out there with Riverview this week and Meadowbrook the following week. So Riverview's 4-4. They win it last week against Meadowbrook with a 3-game winning streak, but had it snapped by the Colts. But their big threat is quarterback Gannon Unger. The guy is a dual threat QB. He's very tough to keep a hold of. Cambridge has seen a couple of those guys this year, going back to Marietta and the Warren games. So, I think they'll be prepared for sure, but Gannon Unger is definitely a player for head coach Chad Massey.
Man, you've seen Riverview this week defensively. Could they give problems with on Cambridge's offense?
I think Cambridge needs to follow Meadowbrook's recipe. Let's give them a heavy dose of Trayvon Jeffrey, and then let's throw it down the field, because Addie Black had a mismatch at 6'5", 6'6". Well, Cambridge has Perkins, who's 6'3". Bartlett, he's like 6'1", I think.
Right.
So take advantage of those mismatches. Throw it over the top. Let your receivers go get it.
Okay, prognosticator.
I've rolled with Cambridge pretty much every week since week 3. I'm not going against them again. They've proven me right other than that Blair game. But I feel Cambridge is going to comfortably win this game. I don't see them having any problems. And honestly, I think Cambridge is going to pitch a shutout this Friday night. I say 34-0 Cambridge.
Well, when Coach Lauer was in here, I told him, here's your scouting report in one word. Said composure. Because when things start going down for Riverview, their players tend to be a little too overly aggressive, and you'll find out when we do the Meadowbrook preview what it really is.
Little chippy.
Yeah, they're a little chippy, and hey, Coach Ly's like, I heard it. I've heard it from other coaches, so it's not just me making this up or whatever. But if they stay composed, like you said, I don't see them having any issues with the Black Bears.
Well, the Bobcats now 5-3 on the season. A big game against the Riverview Black Bears this Friday night. So hopefully Big Blue Nation will turn out and support the Bobcats and see if they can get win number 6 on the board. You're listening to the KGP pregame show, brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. And we'd also like to thank our sponsors, Surgent Construction, Cons, and Valentine Insurance Agency. So that's our Bobcat report. We're going to take a time out, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Meadowbrook Colts, look back at their big win over Riverview, and look forward to their road game at Coshocton. We'll step aside and be right back. Welcome back to the Caleb Graham Production Studios for the Buffalo Wild Wings. KGP pregame show, Tom Strasser, Heath Dawson, and D-Train Darren McCullough. We talked about the Cambridge Bobcats in our last segment. Now, let's talk about the Meadowbrook Colts. And fellas, Meadowbrook goes down to Riverview, a team that's having one of their best years in a long time. And while we talked about Cambridge having a slow start in their game, it was totally the opposite for Meadowbrook D-Train in their game.
Well, they kind of went with the game plan that I've been saying we need to do this more, is throwing it deep down the field to your playmakers and Addie Black and Jerome Todd, and giving it to number one, Timmy Ferguson. I think it worked pretty good on Friday night against the Black Bears.
Yeah. And Heath, what does it say about Meadowbrook, Coach Clendenning, and the seniors, the leaders of this football team, when you think a week ago before their game with Riverview, they go all the way to Bloom Carroll and really win and stay in the playoff hunt game and lose a tough physical game there. What does it show about the coaching staff and the leaders of this football team to show up at Riverview and not go through the motions or anything, but just really dominate the game from the opening kickoff and make a statement?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they could have packed it in after losing at Bloom Carroll. But, you look at things, and Meadowbrook still has things to play for. One, pride. You don't want to finish the season losing out. You know what I mean? So, obviously going into this week, last week they were 2-5. Not what Meadowbrook was thinking before the start of the year, but we've talked about it on the pregame show a few weeks. They're a meat grinder of a schedule. When you were playing Mogador, St. Clairsville, Fort Fry, Bloom Carroll, all 4 playoff teams. You know what I mean? And then they beat John Glenn earlier. But Meadowbrook's to their testament. When you look, you can sit and say, hey, listen. We can finish the season 500, so we, can play for a non-losing season. And then also, if we win Week 10, we can finish the season beating Cambridge. Kind of like Ohio State many years. If they can beat Michigan and have a 500 season or better than, you consider it a success. So I imagine Coach Clendenning was preaching that in the locker room. Hey, listen, our goal is to finish 500 and beat our rival. And, not the season they would have liked, but again, their schedule was probably one of the toughest in southeastern Ohio.
And they also could win the league crown, too,
exactly.
If they win out.
Yes.
And that would be big and definitely one of their goals going in. But D-Train, what was it that really got Meadowbrook going? Because 18-7 at the end of the first quarter, and then by halftime, 32-14, the game was, in all intents and purposes, over after that.
I think they just came and just smacked Riverview in the face right from the get-go. And you hit some big plays, and then all of a sudden, the Riverview kids, I think, got a little upset about it, and things turned a little chippy, which maybe I shouldn't get into, but...
No, enlighten us, please. Enlighten us.
The officials from Friday night, I have known to be able to complain about officials.
No.
But usually,
no.
After every Cubs loss, it's the umpire's fault.
Yeah, the Cubs lose, it's Thumb's fault always, Train. You know that.
But those officials are definitely the worst officials I have ever seen at a high school football game. They have, and I even told Coach Lowry when he was in here, that's why I said composure, because the Riverview kids will hit you after the whistle. They will throw you down on the ground after the whistle, and they will punch you after the whistle. All happened.
I will say one thing, though, Train, on the flip side of that is, I've seen Riverview teams about as soft as you will ever see. So in some senses, I'll credit Coach Massey for having at least a tough team, because I've seen Riverview in years where they look like a 5th grade team out there. I will say at least they're somewhat tougher, not in condoning their behavior, of course, but at least they're fighting now.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally. But anyways, Tom, get control of that set. You're the MC. Get control of it.
But I tell you what, we were at Buckeye Trail Friday night to celebrate their homecoming, and you see it from a home team's aspect. Right. But fellas, as former athletes, how sweet is it to go on the road and really rain on someone else's homecoming? And that's what Meadowbrook did against Riverview, because Riverview coming in, were 4-3 and really liked their chances to go 5-3. And I don't think they realized I'm sure they realized after the game, Meadowbrook's a lot better. And look at the teams they've played. There's a reason they have 5 losses.
So I go back to you guys' Facebook Live pregame show with Coach Kearns. When Heath was interviewing Coach Kearns, I'm looking up in the stands, and I've seen people I haven't seen in years. Well, Riverview's probably got some people in their stands that haven't been there in years. They even had people promoting, because they have a school levy up, so they're promoting that school levy that night. They have homecoming. So again, to kind of see the play on the field, and you're thinking maybe some prominent figures in the Warsaw community are watching that. I mean, I hope it doesn't affect them with their school levy, but if I see that as a community member, I'm going to be like, well, these kids are playing dirty and all this stuff. I don't want that representing my school. That's my biggest thing.
And Heath, when you look at Meadowbrook, let's look at the offensive side of the football. And what more can you say about the game quarterback Davis Singleton had?
Well, I'll rewind and then get to that, Tommy. You said about the homecoming. And, the thing is, Meadowbrook ruined their homecoming party before it even got started, because they scored on their first 5 possessions. And thanks to junior quarterback Davis Singleton, he was 12 of 16, 257 yards and 6 TDs. His favorite target on the night, Addie Black, senior, 6 receptions, 150 yards, 3 TDs. Jerome Todd, 3 receptions, 89 yards, 2 TDs. I mean, their offense the other night was high-powered and on point. When you look at what they did, 450 yards of offense. And the most telling stat, this is a Kerbo, the closer Graham stat. Meadowbrook scored all 44 points in 12 minutes of possession. Now think about that, because Shawton had the ball the rest of the game. When you're scoring 44 points in 12 minutes, you've done your job. And as you said, you've hit some big plays.
Yeah, and Davis Singleton completes 75% of his passes, which is just amazing. 6 touchdowns. What a thrill that is as a quarterback. Fellas, I can tell you, last year I threw 6 touchdowns in gym class, in the 4th graders, playing against them in flag football, but I also threw 2 picks. But to go 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and D-Train, you can take your shots down the field when you've got the bell cow behind you rushing for over 155 yards.
Hey, let's also point out you threw left-handed too.
And those stats would probably start him at the University of Arkansas.
But yeah, when you've got a guy like Timmy Ferguson that is kind of that safety valve that he gets the ball, he's going to get you 5, 6, 7, 8, or 80 yards on any given play. It's kind of nice to have that. And when you throw down the field, what's the worst thing that can happen? They're going to intercept it. Well, hopefully receiver tackles him or he falls down after the interception, so it's kind of almost like a punt. And they hit their big plays, and Addie Black was there to catch him, and Jerome Todd was there to catch him.
And talk about Addie Black and Jerome Todd's ability to strike downfield.
Man, they have done that many times. You look back, we named Addie Play of the Week. He and Davis one week back in St. Clairsville. I think it was a 70-yarder they hit that game. So, I mean, they have hit big, and Jerome Todd has had a couple of touchdowns over 40 yards. I mean, they are probably, as far as a receiving tandem in the area, I can't think of a bigger tandem as far as big strike.
Yeah.
I mean, Cleveland Browns fans were expecting that out of Landry and Beckham. But I think we're seeing our own version down in Byesville between those two, because that has to be a headache for opposing secondaries to try to cover.
And they both have size. You're talking Jerome's 6'2", 6'3",
Right.
Addie's 6'5", 6'6". I mean, there's not too many corners that are going to be able to match up with that. And when it's like having Muggsy Bogues guard Manute Bull. I mean, that's what it looked like with the DB that was guarding Addie Black Friday.
And it's not just their size, it's their speed, because they're both quick too. So, I mean, hats off to, helmets off. I keep saying hats off. Helmets off to Addie and Jerome for their play in the last few weeks.
Yeah, Addie Black, 6 catches, 150 yards, about at 25 yards a pop, and 3 touchdowns. You know, getting the hat trick there. And Todd, 89 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. And Boston Black working underneath also got a touchdown. And Meadowbrook's offense, it was really explosive. And I don't think Riverview had seen that in a while.
No. But, you know, we can sit and talk about Meadowbrook's offense, which is but let's also talk about their defense for a second. I mean, when you look at Riverview had come into that game and scored 111 points in their 3 previous games. Meadowbrook limited them to 14 points. 7 of their points come on a kickoff return. So, I mean, when you look at what they were able to do, they limited Riverview to just 14 points and 162 yards of offense. So, I mean, hats off to that defense on Meadowbrook as well. Just to me, probably Meadowbrook's most complete game of the year.
Yeah, and you point out their scoring. One was on a kickoff return. The other was on a short field because they decided to call penalty after penalty on Meadowbrook to give them a short field, and the other one was in the fourth quarter when the game was already determined. So, I mean, a lot of that scoring was.
We might do a new panel pick, Tom. We might give out the Morton Salty Award to Train this week, right?
And that's after a win.
That's after a win, right? Jeez, Train. That's all right. I know that we've watched football together for years, and if you're saying that, I believe what you're saying. That happened up there, so that's a shame.
But I tell you, you look at Meadowbrook's defense, like you said, holding them 160 yards offense. One thing Riverview's been able to do is run the football with just around 117 yards on the ground and average 3.4 yards a carry. And if you can hold a team that runs the football as much as the Black Bears do, and you hold them to 3.4 yards an attempt, that is just a dominating performance.
And in 36 minutes they had the ball. That's the craziest thing, that they had the ball 36 minutes and only had 162 yards of offense. I mean, that's Meadowbrook shutting them down, if you ask me. I mean, obviously the game plan for Riverview is try to limit Meadowbrook's touches, but I mean, when Meadowbrook got it, they were scoring in 1 or 2 plays, basically.
Well, the good thing for them is not to pour some more salt on the wound, so to speak, but they may have had more penalty yards on Meadowbrook than they had offensive yards.
Right.
But you look, and also Meadowbrook's defense. You talked about Riverview getting a touchdown special teams. Meadowbrook's defense not only dominant, but they also joined in the scoring column as well.
Yeah, Damon Webster deflected the pass, so Eric McCullough got it returned the favor. He deflected one earlier this year that A.J. George caught and ran for a touchdown. Well, this time Damon deflects one, and Eric's the benefactor of the deflection pick 6. So whenever you get points from your defense, that's a big help.
I've played in the Mitchell front yard two-hand touch league for several years. Eric didn't get his skills from Train, obviously.
Yeah, short intermediate routes, I was deadly.
You were deadly, that's true. But hats off to Eric for that pick 6 the other night, for sure. Tip of the helmet.
And fellas, again, when you talk about Timmy Ferguson, as he just continues to add to his career record books, it's just amazing. 155 yards, and fellas, I would be willing to bet, and the biggest thing that stands out is this may be the first time that Timmy has ran for 120 or more and not got in the end zone, but they really didn't need it.
Yeah, how often do we sit on this show and Timmy Ferguson puts up a nut like that and it's just an afterthought, you know what I mean? But that just tells you how good Davis was the other night in that offense and their defense. I mean, again, I'll go back to it. I mean, when Timmy's running for 155 yards on 21 carries, it was just an absolute complete game. And if Meadowbrook can do that the next 2 weeks, I mean, they're in great shape. So, I mean, they just really played well. And Timmy, they're, like I said a few weeks ago, they're there's no other adjectives that we can use to describe his play. He is going to put some career stats up that honestly may never be touched down in Byesville.
Yeah, and
you said the 21 carries. When's the last time he's carried the ball that many times?
Exactly, yeah.
'Cause he's been at the maybe 15 at the most the past few weeks, so
yeah, Fort
give
Fry,
that bell cow a little carry.
Yeah, Fort Fry didn't he only have like 9 carries for like 20-some yards? So, I mean, it's nice to see him get some touches.
Yeah, but fellas, in defense there, in those games when Meadowbrook, when they did get behind and you're forced to throw the football and lead the running game, that hurts because the teams, they're going to let you run the ball and to run out the clock. But Meadowbrook got behind in some of those games.
Good point,
but that
Tony.
just shows you when they stay on top. But again, we just talk about Timmy Ferguson, 155 yards. And like you say, what a credit and a compliment it is to him where you just go, okay.
It's expected.
We expect because it is, but a great job. And again, when he's running the football like that, boy, it sets up the play action and the strikes downfield because you have to put at least 8 guys in the box. And then that allows the playmakers to make plays downfield. And when you complete 75% of your passes, you're going to score and score plenty.
It's like you and I said on the sideline, remember at the trail game the other night, Perry was running. I said, I'd like to just get in there and take a lick. And then they're running at us like freight trains, like, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that's the way some kids on opposing teams see Ferguson running at him. They're like, oh, dear God, how do we stop this guy? So it's crazy to be, if you can watch from the stands, that's one thing. But when you're standing on the sidelines and see guys like Ferguson and Perry, Trayvon running, it's a whole different ballgame to bring down guys like that.
That pops a little louder when you're right there.
Right.
Well, Meadowbrook gets to get back on the bus and drive just past Warsaw into Coshocton to take on the Redskins. And I tell you, over the years, Meadowbrook and Coshocton, they have had some entertaining football games. But the one thing Coshocton has had trouble with is keeping their opponents out of the end zone. And here comes a Meadowbrook squad that just in, like you said, 12 minutes put up 44. The way Meadowbrook's playing, you got to like their chances if they don't turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean, they've won 2 out of 3 in the game against Bloom Carroll. Obviously, they played a lot better than the score indicated there. So, I mean, when you look at Coshocton coming in, I'm sure Meadowbrook's probably feeling pretty good. But as Coach Lowry told you guys, he told myself as well, I'm sure he had probably warned Coach Clendenning, Coshocton is a lot better than 1-7. They've lost 6 in a row, but their competition they've played, you look at some of the losses, Philo, playoff contender, New Lex, playoff contender, Ridgemont, one of the best teams, Indian Valley, one of the best teams, Cambridge. I mean, Coshocton, we talked about Meadowbrook's meat grinder of a schedule. Coshocton hasn't had an easy schedule either. And if you look at last week, your Guernsey County Brethren's to the north, they were down 12-0 to Coshocton. So you can't overlook them, even though their record and their lopsided scores that they've had. Coshocton is a lot better team, and if Meadowbrook don't come in there like they did against Union Local, Bloom Carroll, and last week against Riverview, they could be tested.
And guys, like you said, Coshocton's lost 5 in a row. Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of pretty good football teams out there that would have ran that gauntlet and come in with 5 losses
and that's
in a row.
6 in a row, Tom.
Or 6 in a row, yes.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, and then the New Lex score, we made light of that last year, 82-60, is Arena League game. I mean, they when they've been in games, they put up some points. They were able to score 36 there against Claymont, 29 against Crooksville. So, I mean, they can put on put some points up on the board. But, Coshocton just, it's very uncharacteristic of them to be 1-7. But as I told Coach Lowry, I said, it would be hard-pressed to probably find a better 1-7 team in the entire state of Ohio.
Yes, I mean that as a compliment. And, guys, a little KGP pregame nugget. You mentioned Philo. Philo, with their win, actually jumped ahead of Bloom Carroll into the 8th spot.
Yep.
Bloom Carroll beat a team that was winless on the year. So after they beat Meadowbrook, they stayed 8. They actually dropped 9. So Philo right now sitting there.
And a big shout out on Philo. Ashland Bailey plays for Philo, defensive back and receiver. My nephew, so he's on that team, senior. So congrats to you, Ashland, and everybody on the Electrics.
Boy,
All right.
both of you
We're
just got
quiet.
family. Both of you
Wow.
got
That never-
family members making plays.
Hey, that's how we do. But you guys probably, we go down to Arkansas, you guys are probably captains of the creek bed and catching crawfish. So we probably couldn't do that down there, Tom. So good job to you and your family.
Well,
Hillbilly catfishing.
As I try to get control, prediction with the Meadowbrook Coshocton.
The thing is, going back to the same week thing with Cambridge, if they can stop quarterback Gavin Williams, shut down running back Cameron Johns, and keep Braden Johns out of the end zone wide receiver, I like Meadowbrook's chances. But again, don't overlook Coshocton, because I feel like they feel like on their schedule, again, Meadowbrook is a team we can get a victory against. That's what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. So if Meadowbrook goes into that and not overlooking them, I feel pretty confident in Meadowbrook. Right now, the way their offense is playing and the element that Davis Singleton has given that team. Coach Clendenning said, hey, listen, he puts it out there and lets our athletes make plays for him, and right now they're just gelling. I really think that Meadowbrook goes up there and comes away with a 2-touchdown victory.
The big thing, Meadowbrook lost their identity or swagger there. When they had that losing skid,
Mm-hmm.
that Barnesville loss took a lot out of that
good
team.
point.
I mean, that one game took so much out of them, that a game they expected to win, and it took them 3 weeks to recover. They recovered against Union Local well, and then they had to go to Bloom Carroll. They fought tooth and nail with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now last week, that was probably their best game played overall,
Right.
4 quarters of football.
I agree.
I think we're going to see that continued
Mm-hmm.
Friday night against Coshocton. And I think the deep ball and Timmy Ferguson is going to be the 44-21 victory, or whatever the score will be. I think they got the secret recipe right there they need to look to.
Good prediction, Train.
And look for Meadowbrook
Same
to
scores
try
last
to
week.
go up there and get off to another fast start like they did against the Black Bears. Well, this was your Meadowbrook Colts segment. We want to wish Coach Clendenning and the boys best of luck as they travel to Coshocton. And once again, we want to thank our sponsors. Of course, Buffalo Wild Wings for sponsoring the KGP pregame show every week, as well as Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Cons. And we're going to take another time out. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Buckeye Trail Warriors, their big victory last week, and maybe their biggest game of the season coming up this week against Sandy Valley. We'll step aside and be back after this timeout. Welcome back to the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP pregame show, coming to you live from the luscious studios of Caleb Graham Productions. I'm merely Tom Strasser, Heath Dawson, D-Train Darren McCullough. We talked about the Bobcats, we talked about the Colts. Now, let's talk about the Buckeye Trail Warriors. And fellas, before we look ahead to Week 9 and their big showdown with Sandy Valley, let's look back. The big homecoming game against the Tuscaroras Central Catholic Saints, and TCC came in and they ran into a ground and pound buzzsaw.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were there live, Tommy. The crowd was electric. It was just an awesome atmosphere. But Trail come out 410 yards on the ground, led by Franco Romes, 126 yards. The sophomore added also 2 touchdowns on 13 carries. Senior Jack Perry, 18 carries for 122 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, basically what happened in that game, as you and I talked on the sideline, Tom, Buckeye Trail just imposed their will on a much smaller TCC squad. And I mean, like we said, TCC gave it their best, but Trail just was too much for them on Friday night.
And D-Train, when you look at the TCC Saints, they had some talented players, especially at the skilled positions. But when you looked at, when we had a chance to be on the sideline down on the field, when you looked at the offensive and defensive line, just the power and the strength that Trail had over TCC, they just could not match the physicality that the Warriors had. And you talked about the big rushing game, but D-Train Trail going into the locker room had 260 yards on the ground and was up 30-7 at the half.
I mean, that just shows you're dominating up front on both sides of the football. I mean, it's been the same story all year. Their offensive line has created holes for their running backs. I think this is I want to say third time this year they've ran as a team over 400 yards. That's pretty impressive there. And then defensively, that front four, I mean, you ask Coach Hartmeyer, he wants them just take up blocks and let the other guys make plays. And sometimes those front four, they sneak in there and make a play behind the line of scrimmage.
And Heath, even though Buckeye Trail loves to pound the football at you and just beat you up physically and run right at you, again, it's a number of people toting the rock. And again, you had Jack Perry and Franco Rome both going over 100 yards in the same game. That's very impressive.
Yeah, 248 yards and 5 touchdowns combined. I mean, that's quite the combo. And I ran into Donnie Kearns on Sunday in my neighborhood, so I was able to talk to him there.
I was going to guess B-Dubs.
No, not B-Dubs, no. Okay. No, I think Coach Kearns might be on a diet right now, so I'm not sure. But anyways, you know, we talked about, you know, the game, and he was just praising Franco, and it's like, man, am I glad to have him around 2 more years, because people don't know really how good he is because Jack's been so good and Isaac's been so good. So he was really praising Franco because he's never complained about his touches, never complained that he's not getting the spotlight, that he's just hung in there. So, I mean, big credit to Franco Rome. But, yeah, when you've got Jack Perry, I told you on the side, I'm like, you know, I knew in the preseason when KGP went out and shot their preseason photos and stuff, I said, Jack Perry is a man among boys. And watching him on the sidelines, up close and personal, I mean, the guy looked like he was a D1 linebacker out there. I mean, he is a moose. And, I mean, when he hit somebody, it just sounded like a shotgun going off. And I thought, man, this guy, I can't believe how hard it would be to tackle him. So, yeah, I mean, just hats off to those guys. I mean, with Coach Kearns having those two, I mean, it probably makes life a lot easier.
But D-Train, the one thing I was impressed with Coach Kearns and his coaching staff was they could have ran the ball every single play, and TCC was not going to stop Trail from getting 10 yards and 3 carries. That wasn't happening. But Trail still thinking ahead, mixed in the passing game, and Hickman was able to get some strikes, especially on a couple of slants in between the vaunted running game.
Yeah, when you run as well as they've run all year, all of a sudden now you've got everybody closing in on the line of scrimmage, and you can pop the top on one of them. That's exactly what they did there. Hit that open hole on a slant route or a cross route. Because a lot of teams, I guarantee, they say, hey, Buckeye Trail's getting off the bus, running the football. We got to stop the running game, but nobody's found the recipe for it yet.
I think honestly, looking at that game, and Tom, you'll probably agree, I think one of the biggest moments of that game, and it's hard to say there was a big moment in a 52-7 win, against TCC, but when you look, Coach Kearns early in the game went for it. Remember, on 4th down at midfield, after Trail had turned it over on its previous possession, and then TCC goes down. Alex Smith, what a talent that kid is! Found Jake Miller for a touchdown. Pulled him to 16-7. You're thinking, man, if Trail doesn't get this, TCC's got some momentum. But they went for it. They converted at the 9:13 mark there, and moments later, Franco scored on an 18-yard run, and Trail never looked back from that point. I think Coach Kearns injected some confidence into that team because, you never know. You still would think, hey, Trail has more talent, but, going for it like that after they had just scored, I thought that was a big moment early on in that game.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Alex Price Rice, the outstanding quarterback for TCC, in a second. But with Buckeye Trail, fellows, when you look at their running game and the chunks of yardage they get downfield, especially when their running backs get into the secondary, it's natural to praise the offensive line because they're creating the hose. But give the wide receivers a lot of credit. You watching them on the sidelines, they do a great job engaging in the DBs and blocking downfield. And I know wide receiver coach Brett Shipman, he's really done a lot of work, especially on the jet sweep, getting the wide receivers to hold their block. And for people like Franco Rome, you don't have to hold your block downfield, but Trail's receivers, they love the block, and you can't say that about every receiving core that you see.
You're right. I think that, when you sit and say, hey, Trail controlled the line of scrimmage, that's just not in the trenches. Yeah. That's outside as well. I mean, when they're controlling the clock the way they did in the line of scrimmage. And the nice thing I like about Trail's receivers is you don't see McGilton or Rominger. They're not there for the accolades. I will truly say that Trail is a legitimate team because they're all in it for the same reason, and that's to get a W. And I just felt, there they are running the ball. And as a receiver, it has to be hard going out there and blocking and watching your team run for 410 yards and only pass for 27. You're wanting to get the ball, especially McGilton's had some big touchdowns. I mean, Rominger's an acrobat, obviously. So I really thought these guys are two of the most unselfish kids out there blocking and not looking for their own accolades. I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, you can't say enough as a receiver, like you guys have all said. The ball's not coming my way. Well, I'm not going to block for this guy. I want the ball. The unselfishness on that team is uncanny. I mean, you look at their offense, how many different kids carried the ball Friday night and was successful? You got Rome and Perry both over 100 yards. Hickman and Newhart had over 40. Yep. The Smith kid is coming on.
That Shane Smith's pretty good, too, let me tell you.
You got the Bates kid I think he got a rushing touchdown in the game, too, maybe. I mean, you've just got so many different weapons that are running the football. It's tough to key on a certain person or certain area.
But guys, let's flip to the other side of the football. And you talk about Shane Smith, mentioning him from his linebacker position. I tell you what, TCC, they spread you out and they throw the football all over the field, and a lot of times it's the yards after catch that they hurt you. And I had a chance to talk to Coach Kearns, and I told him, I said, Coach, they did not get much yak yards after catch. When they caught the football, they got punished right when they caught it. And that may have been a reason TCC dropped, I think, 5 passes in the first half alone, because they were paying for the completions. So there wasn't much yak there. Trust me, Coach Kearns, there's a lot more yak here on the here on the panel that I have to put up with, more than TCC got to do against Trail. But Shane Smith, he had the hit of the night.
Oh, man.
Their outstanding wide receiver,
brutal.
Nutbaum, caught the ball over the middle, and he hit him, dislodged the football, and that kind of sent a statement to the Saints receivers: don't come over the middle.
Couple different statements. I thought that was big. Rominger had a big hit. Perry, first pass by Alex Smith of the game. Perry picks it off. So I mean, Trail was letting their defensive front obviously do a lot of the grunt work. I mean, and they were dominant all night. Josh Green, Dylan Berry, Casey Ruckman, Ronnie Rominger. Those guys were playing well, but Trail's secondary was doing a nice job. Early on, Trail had a little bit of trouble. After that pick and the Smith hit, and I asked Coach Kearns about that. He said we played a man early, and when we pressured them, we had a little trouble catching Smith because our guys had their backs to the ball playing deep man defense. But he said when we went zone and pressured him, it was really effective. What you could see Smith start getting a little bit frustrated as the game went on. He said once we flushed him from the pocket, we had guys in coverage flying up and helping finish the play. And I'm telling you, Shane Smith, when he finished the one play, I don't know how to describe it other than it was brutal. I mean, he crushed that dude. So hats off to him and that whole defense. That defense was very impressive because let me tell you something about Alex Smith. Let's talk about him for a second, Tom, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Alex Price.
Or Alex Price, I'm sorry. Alex Price. Alex Smith, he's the quarterback for the Redskins.
And a pretty good one.
Pretty good quarterback. Yeah, Alex Price. If you ever want to put together an escape room team, I'm telling you, you need to have Alex Price on your team because I've never seen escapability from a quarterback like that. And Tommy, what did you say he was?
No, he reminded me of the one, the only
Doug Flutie. I mean, this kid was all over the place. I mean, I've never seen such a Houdini at high school. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, this kid, I felt bad for him because he had literally kids blocking for him 150 pounds, maybe. They were so small, but if he was on a team that had, if he was on the flip side, like had a trail offensive line, it would be amazing to see what that kid could do. You know, one point in the game that I loved was Ronnie Rominger. He was the first one to sack Price finally, but Rominger had chased, the defensive front chased Price out of the pocket. He turned one way and kind of was snaking in and out of everything. The play must have went on for what seemed like a minute. But he finally come over towards the sideline, and Rominger chased him down and knocked him down, and Price hit a pass for a first down, and Rominger just looked at him and was just shaking his head and held his hands up like, well, how do you do this? He picked him up and fist bumped him, and I told Coach Kearns, of all the things I saw on Friday night, that was the most impressive thing, because when your team respects how good another player is or another team is, that says a lot about your staff and your kids. So, Ronnie, if you're watching this show, man, I want to tell you, credit, brother, because that impressed me with the way you were with your respect. So, but that Price kid, I've never seen. I've seen football, high school football, for 3 decades, and I'm telling you, that kid was as good as they come as far as his mobility. It was unbelievable.
Maybe it was the jersey number, but I compared him to another guy from the highlights I saw. I thought there was a little Johnny Manziel in him. I don't know if he was flashing the money signs after he made plays. Probably not, because I figured he'd get a flag for that, but the escapability, just in the little bit that I saw, was very impressive.
It was unreal.
Yeah, but the defense, Price, Buckeye Trail, I told Coach Kearns, normally stats can be deceiving. This Trail had, I seen 2 sacks. I seen one, that said 3 sacks. And you may think, well, that's misleading because he was running for his life, literally 15 to 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, juking and jiving, weaving and bobbing, and somehow able to deliver the football. Some passes were dropped, but Price finished 8 of 24 for 90 yards and 1 touchdown. And I know he threw a pick or 2 picks as well.
Right.
But to hold the Saints' vaunted offense to 127 yards for the game, that's amazing.
And he had 127 of their 136 yards of offense because he added 38 on the ground. So I asked Coach, I said, was Price a headache or what? And he said, hey, Alex is a good quarterback. He is very elusive. We knew keeping him contained was critical. We did a nice job of that. He can definitely beat with his legs, and we stopped that. And Coach Kearns is right. If they wouldn't have been able to contain him and had him moving around the way they did, it could have been maybe a different story. So again, Trail's defense was big. And one guy I really want to point out, Trey McGilton had 2 massive defensive plays in the first half. He had an interception, remember, in the end zone before the half, which stopped a touchdown. Then he had another big pass breakup that was right near the end zone, on the far end zone, away from the sidelines there. A 35-yard heave by Price. So Trey had 2 massive defensive plays early on in that game that was really critical for Trail.
Yeah, and now a big win over TCC, homecoming, exciting night at Buckeye Trail. Warriors return back home this Friday night, week 9, and take on the Cardinals of Sandy Valley, who come in with a record of 7-1, and their quarterback, Cam Blair, only a junior, saying all of this about Price. This kid may be the best quarterback Trail sees this year.
And that's been the story, it seems like, every week we're talking about. This is the best quarterback they're going to see all year.
Right.
No, this kid's going to be the best quarterback. Well, Cam Blair, he has led an offense that has had 21 passing touchdowns and 21 rushing touchdowns this year. So they got a balanced scoring effort. They've outscored teams of 325 to 107. He's thrown for 1,236 yards and 21 touchdown passes. So we talked about the past couple weeks. It was Montana and Rice, and then it was Aikman and Irvin. So now this week I'm going to name them the greatest show on turf. Even though they play on a natural grass field, they're the greatest show on turf. Because along with his 479 yards rushing and 11 rushing touchdowns, they got a running back, Obrajovic. I assume that's how you say it. 615 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. He's got his staple of receivers. Russell has 24 catches, 356 yards, 8 touchdowns. Evans has 29 catches, 383 yards, 5 touchdowns. Tucci has 12 catches, 196 yards, 4 touchdowns. And Kelly has 18 catches, 213 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I tell you what, there's some teams that would like to have Kelly's numbers as their number 1 receiver this late in the season.
Right. Man.
And I tell you, if you have a wide receiver named Tucci, I bet you he can hit the three-pointer as well.
Right.
And he just, how good is Cam Blair? Well, not only does he have Buckeye Trail's attention, he's drawing attention at the next level.
Yeah, and Trey, I'm going to give you some props. One, I didn't know that you were a pronunciation master, so good job on that.
Yeah, I had to do the claps with the syllables.
Or a statistician, so nice work.
I worked with him
I knew
in rehearsal.
Mentor.
Big shout out to our university, Hardy University, for giving this man a great education. So, but yeah, Cam Blair, he is getting D1 looks. He has MAC offers already as a junior. So, hey, and if you're getting him as a junior, they're going to start rolling even more as he's a senior. So, I mean, this kid is the real deal. He is, this is a good factoid that the closer would like again. He is the all-time leading touchdown passer in Stark County history. Now, folks, if you don't know where Stark County's at, that's up north around Canton, Akron area. I mean, when he's the all-time leader in that county, this dude is legit.
You're talking about the greatest possibly high school team in the state of Ohio. McKinley.
Yeah, McKinley.
Exactly.
And you've got some other schools in that Canton area that's pretty good. So when you're in that kind of company, this kid is elite. And Trail fans, if you're out there and thinking, it's too cold or whatever, go out and support your Warriors, and also go out and see Cam Blair, because Buckeye Trail, as we've said, it's been unbelievable the quarterbacks they faced this year. Like you said, I mean, Price, Hutchison, I mean, they've had so many kids that they've had to face. And the nice thing about Trail is, let's give them credit, they have shut down every single quarterback they faced. But I'm telling you, this is the biggest test that they're going to have all season.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I don't know what's more impressive about that factoid, that he's the all-time leading touchdown passer in Stark County, or the part that you said he's a junior. He's only a junior, so he's going to add to his record. And fellas, as Buckeye Trail sits at 10th in their region, this is a big game. Sandy Valley 7-1. I looked at their region; they're sitting 11th in their region.
Man, so that just shows you how good football is around here.
So this is a big game as far as playoffs. But there's one thing: do not get lost. First things first, Buckeye Trail and Sandy Valley. This is for the IVC championship in the North Division. So the winner of this game wins the league title. And that's something a lot of people would not have thought they would say something with Buckeye Trail coming into this year. And it's just a credit the season that they've had, that they're playing for the IVC championship.
Right. And, going back, one thing, if they're going to win, they're going to have to stop Blair. That's the first thing. And Donnie's 2 words about it. He said, this is all I've got to say about him. He's a pure stud. I mean, so when you're saying pure stud about a kid, that's legit. I said, hey, listen, you don't want to talk about playoffs, that's fine. But talk about the atmosphere this week, about the importance of winning that IVC title. And Coach Kern said this, and Buckeye Trail's had a lot of big games going back to Shenandoah, Caldwell, Barnesville's, Meadowbrook a few years. He said, I would venture to say that this is the biggest game at Buckeye Trail since 2007. He said, our kids have really embraced the challenge this week. It will be a great opportunity for our kids to play in an atmosphere like this. The playoff implications are important. Both teams have to win to get a chance to be in. He said the winner will also be the IVC champ since everyone else has at least 2 losses. He said it will be an awesome atmosphere. He said it's an atmosphere I have dreamed about when I took this job. We are excited. So, I mean, if anything, you can't say that Trail's not going to come into this game being hyped.
Yes, and the Warrior Nation, I'm sure they're going to turn out, and they need to. Sandy Valley, they'll bring a strong contingent. And this game will have a playoff-like atmosphere, a lot on the line, the league title on the line, and it ought to be a great game and a very entertaining game. And Coach Kearns, you called Cam Blair a pure stud. I know one here myself. Yeah. I thought I was the only one you called that. Wow. So we'll talk off the air, when we get a chance. But
let's move on.
I need to take a break. But we'd like to wish Buckeye Trail the best of luck. And like we said, we had a good time going out and doing a special pregame show out there before the TCC game. Got to talk to Coach Hartmeyer and Coach Kearns, and Caleb Graham did a great job getting things set up, and we appreciate that.
Thanks, Buckeye Trail people, for the hospitality, the coaches up top that you showed myself and Tommy and Caleb. We really appreciate the way you welcomed us and made us feel at home on the sidelines the other night. Coach Kearns, you have created an atmosphere down there that is welcoming, and that's just, I'm impressed with what you've done, not just because we're friends, but you have done an amazing job at Buckeye Trail.
And it also starts with the athletic director, Aaron Bates, doing a great job. Right. And Aaron, I thank you for finally getting security and getting Caleb Graham off the sidelines in the third quarter. We appreciate that. So good luck to the Warriors. It's the Warriors and Cardinals in Old Washington this Friday night. It could be the game of the night, possibly the game of the year. So we've talked about the Warriors, the Cats, and the Colts. When we come back for our last segment, that's right, it's the BW3 panel picks. And once again, we want to thank our fine sponsors. Of course, Buffalo Wild Wings, our main sponsor, as well as Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Cons. And when we come back, it's the BW3's panel picks after this timeout. Welcome back to the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP pregame show, and we are now set for the BW3 panel picks. And once again, we'll start out with the Surgent Construction Legacy Builders Offensive Player of the Week. And fellas, man, did we have a lot to choose from Timmy Ferguson, 155 yards on the ground. Trayvon Jeffries at Cambridge, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. How about Jack Perry for Buckeye Trail, over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. Addie Black, 150 yards receiving for Meadowbrook and 3 touchdowns. But Train, our Surgent Construction Legacy Builder Offensive Player of the Week is?
Well, when you have a lot of offense and everybody wins, you have to get the clean sweep. Sorry, our broom was out for assignment this week, so we had the clean sweep. So our offensive Surgent Construction Offensive Player of the Week was Davis Singleton, 12 of 16 passing, 257 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
And don't forget, you didn't mention Franco Rome, also 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I don't want to forget about him this week as well.
Oh, yes. There were so many to pick from. But congratulations to Davis Singleton. 6 touchdowns for Meadowbrook. He is this week's Surgent Construction Legacy Builders Offensive Player of the Week. And now let's move to the other side of the football, Heath, and we're going to look at the Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week. And again, we had some tough choices for Cambridge. Logan Mobilini had 7 tackles. And again, how about Jack Perry? Another interception this week for the Warrior defense. But our Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week for Week 8 is...
I mean, you have to go with Trail's defensive front. They dominated the game the other night, limited Tuskegee Catholic to just 7 points, 136 yards of offense, which is a huge feat with Alex Price as quarterback at TCC. But these 4 gentlemen, Josh Green, Dylan Berry, Casey Ruckman, and Ronnie Rominger. Those 4 set the tone all night for Buckeye Trail, and I don't know how you could have given it to anybody else this week because those 4 were just impressive as a unit, so hats off to those guys.
Yeah, dominating the defensive line and plus running a mini marathon chasing Alex Price, the outstanding quarterback for the Saints all night long. So congratulations to the Buckeye Trail defensive line for this week's Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Players of the Week. And our last award for Week 8, simply the Play of the Week. And I tell you what, the Buckeye Trail, the Shane Smith hit on Nut Bomb over the middle really set the tone for that football game. That was a big play during that game. But we have players of the week. And Heath, I'll let you give the first one.
Okay, and you could go back down to Meadowbrook and look at what Addy and Jerome did, as far as big touchdowns down there. But for myself, it was Trayvon Jeffrey. He scored an 11-yard touchdown in the 4th quarter. Cambridge was hanging on to a close 17-12 game. They were in a tussle all night, and Trayvon's touchdown there in the 4th quarter sealed a 24-12 victory. So hats off to Trayvon and his big run there at the end of the game. So he has been huge for Cambridge this year, and again showed up on Friday night when they needed him most.
All right, and our other play of the week, D-Train?
Is this the Homer defensive play of the week?
Yeah.
I'm going with Eric McCullough's pick 6 against Riverview. It's a 16-yard interception return for a touchdown. Kudos to Damon Webster for deflecting it, and Eric for catching it, returning it for a touchdown. Eric proclaimed himself public enemy number 1 after that Friday night game with the antics that went on, but I think he and the Colts won in the end, though.
So our Play of the Week winners, we want to congratulate Trayvon Jeffrey of Cambridge and Eric McCullough of Meadowbrook. Well, fellas, that wraps things up here at the Caleb Graham Production Studios for week number 8 as we look forward to this Friday night, week number 9, Cambridge playing Riverview, Meadowbrook traveling to take on the Coshocton Redskins and the Buckeye Trail Warriors. Welcome in the Sandy Valley Cardinals with the North Division IVC title on the line, as well as playoff dreams as well. So as we get ready to head out, once again, I want to thank my sidekicks, Heath Dawson, Darren McCullough, D-Train, and our man behind the scenes doing a great job, Caleb Graham, for his great work, and the closer, the one and only Kirby Graham, once again on assignment this week.
And I want to add one thing, folks that's watching, we've got a special treat next week as we're going to go live from Meadowbrook High School for the Cambridge and Meadowbrook games. So KGP will be live at the campus. Come down with your signs, the students and fans. We want you there behind our set. So come down and enjoy a night with us. We'll be live next week, Friday night, a special live performance of KGP Productions.
And please, no Strasser for president sign.
Yes, Strasser for president.
Too late. I've already have them made up. I just got to pay someone to show them.
All right.
So for the Buffalo Wild Wings, KGP pregame show this week. I'm Tom Strasser. Once again, thanking you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week from Meadowbrook.
And you can count on me meeting you on the sidelines.
And you stay classy, Guernsey County.